Just because you have an understanding of the Bible in your head doesn't necessarily mean that you have Jesus in your heart.
Get right, get inside, get hungry, got appetite. Everlasting water, never get thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey.
You are listening to Chad Schaefer on Disputed Lands.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this hour of the Josh and Christina Peck Marathon. Today, I'm joined by another special guest, a first-time visitor on the Disputed Lands, and you can see him there on screen. But before I introduce him, I'm going to remind you once again that the whole purpose of this is for raising money for Josh and Christina Peck. The way you want to do that is you can see scrolling across the bottom of your screen right now, dailyrenegade.com. That's dailyrenegade.com. That is Josh Peck's website. You go there, you find the donate button, and you can donate directly to him. We're not setting any amount because if I set an amount, you guys would reach it and stop giving. So I want you to be able to give from your hearts and give what you can. If it's $1, it's $1. If it's $100, if it's $100, if it's more than that, we'll take that too. If you want to remain anonymous, there is a way to do that, I believe, as well. They have a GoFundMe account as well. You're going to find that one in the link in the description below this video when it airs. It should be there, and I believe you can give anonymously there. So don't forget to do that. And that's the whole reason we're doing these interviews, on top of talking to some exciting, wonderful people and some of the things that they've been doing and discovering out there. And so with that, I will say, without further ado, welcome my guest, Jim Barfield. Jim, welcome to Disputed Lands, brother.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. It's a wonderful cause. I love those guys, and I want to support them. And I hope everybody out in your audience supports them as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jim, since this is your first time on our show, you have a vast background, so I'm not going to make you run through all of that. But if you want to give us the Cliff Notes version of your background, go ahead and share that with us now, if you would.
Well, the start of my adult career, I was in the military, and like a lot of guys, I joined the military, and in my case, I had very little choices left. I mean, my family couldn't afford college. I couldn't afford college, so I went in the military, stayed in there for 10 years. At the end of that, I went through the instructor pilot course, and I was flying helicopters for the Army. Loved it. That was a wonderful job, and wonderful people. Still got friends from that time frame. But I went from there, went to the Law and Fire Department. I kind of wanted to stay in something paramilitary, and I got out because I had a son living here, and got to come back and be with him. That was wonderful. But my fire department career actually helped me with the research that I'm doing, which is the Copper Scroll. The Copper Scroll project is a project we're working on, and with the information and knowledge I got from being an investigator, I did the arson investigation, and that really helped, especially with the report writing, because when I first made the discovery about the Copper Scroll, and I'll just kind of explain what the Copper Scroll is. The Copper Scroll is a document. It's about 7 feet long, about 1 foot wide, maybe a little wider, and it's got 12 columns of Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, and that ancient Hebrew describes the locations of 57 hoards of just magnificent amounts of treasure. I'm not real crazy about the gold and silver, but good golly, there's going to be some, if I'm correct, there's going to be some major discoveries in the biblical world, because the guys that hid this stuff, a lot of the archaeologists and the scholars will argue with me that I don't care. I really absolutely believe we figured out this Copper Scroll, and if I'm right, then the information I'm telling you about the history behind the Copper Scroll is right. This was all done during the time that Babylon was beginning to attack Jerusalem, is beginning to attack Israel, which at the time was Judah, actually. The 10 northern tribes had already gone into exile. Well, when they were attacking, they attacked Qumran, this little spot. It's a spot on the north end of the Dead Sea, on the west side, right there in the area that they call today, they call it the West Bank. I call it Judea Samaria, because that's actually what it is. Well, they attacked, and luckily the men that were living at Qumran, there was a pretty large group of men living there. And the story behind Qumran is every bit as important and every bit as exciting to me as this gold and silver. Gold and silver is just gold and silver. It's kosher metal to be used for the coming temple. And listen, guys, people wonder, why are you so excited about this gold and silver? And I'm not. But what that gold and silver is the dowry for the coming bride. And there was a rabbi that told me that, a very high rabbi in Israel. The guy looked me in the eye. He thought I was a nut when I told him I'd figured out I'd understand the Copper Scroll. He said, "Do you realize what this is?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's the treasures of the temple." He said, "No, it's more than that." He said, "It's the dowry for the coming bride." Now, hearing that coming from an Orthodox Jew really flipped my wig. I thought, what is that?
I can imagine. I can imagine.
He got out of his chair, he come around the table, and he picked me up and kissed me on both cheeks. He said, "Mr. Barfield, do you know how important this is?" And I said, "Yes, of course." I said, "It's important to me. It's important to my people as well." But that's how I got started, is figuring out this Copper Scroll. And if I'm right, you're talking about 57 hoards of magnificent amounts of gold. And let me tell you, one location it's got 900 talents of gold, polished gold, high quality gold. And I know exactly where it's at. And I wouldn't be so confident. But this rabbi examined my research. He fell in love with it. And there was a lady that lived very near here. Now, this is a strange story. She lives very near here. She's a Comanche lady, wonderful. Her name is Juanita Pataponi. Juanita heard my presentation. They had asked me at the school where I was teaching, the college where I was teaching, they asked me to do a lunch presentation. So I did. They loved it. Told them what I'm going to be telling you guys today. And she just said, "Jimmy, I think I can help you with your project." And I'm thinking, how is a little Comanche lady? She actually taught art to my children in high school. And she had moved up in the world and got her a job at the college. And I went to her office and I said, "Juanita, how are you going to help me?" She said, "Jimmy, I know people in Israel that work for the Antiquities Authority." I said, "Okay." But I said, what does he do?" She said, I said, "Is he a janitor? Is he one of the clerks? What does he do?" She said, "Oh, no." She said, "He is the head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel." And he was. His name was Shuka Dorfman. They were buddies. They lived in my hometown for a short time when he was going through military training, because Fort Sill, Oklahoma is here. He was an artillery officer. This was an artillery post, the training center of the world for American artillery. And he lived here. So long story short, that's how I got started on this process, but there's a lot more to the story, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, let me back up and ask you this. So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that the Copper Scroll was created at the time of Babylon invading Judea and Samaria and Israel. Is that correct? Is that when it was created?
Yeah, it was created at the time that right after there was a battle. They had attacked this little outpost. Now you got to picture this. They call it a city, a Qumran, a city. A lot of times it's not. It's just a little tiny village at best. You could put the entire village on a football field, and it fit pretty nicely. But yeah, there was a lot of buildings there, and it looked like a military outpost. It's really not, but it looked like a military outpost, and they were armed. because listen, that Qumran was like a truly military outpost, but it was more than that. If you've ever wondered where the prophets of Israel lived at, go to Qumran. Go to Qumran, because I'm telling you, if I'm right, that was the home of all the prophets of Israel, except for maybe a few. But have you ever heard of Melchizedek order?
Oh, yes.
That is the home of the Melchizedek order. People don't realize it. And let me tell you something else while we're talking about that. I was looking, as I was finishing up my research, I started looking for a map of Jerusalem at the time of Jeremiah. And I found one. And when I did, I looked at it, I thought, why in the world did they draw Qumran upside down? And there wasn't Qumran, it was Jerusalem. I'm telling you, it's a near identical match on that.
It was just one of those things that you hadn't have noticed it had you not already been looking so intently at that area to begin with.
Absolutely. It was just incredible. And I looked at it and I'm thinking, these are educated men. They wouldn't, north is always at the top on a map. You've been through some aviation training.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you know that. Well, it was completely upside down. Everything was flipped over. So they designed that little village to look like Jerusalem and imitate and mimic Jerusalem. And I think there was a very special reason for that.
Yeah, let's go into that. So what makes, I'm just going to go off your thing. What makes you so sure that when you've made was the map? I'm going to have to edit it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry, get the boys. They're making all kinds of racket and we're on the air.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Sorry about that, folks. The technical difficulties there. I don't know what happened. The connection's trying to been interfering here. So what I was saying is, when you first discovered this, and even finding out about the Copper Scroll to begin with, why did you even think to begin looking at it?
Actually, I had gone to Texas to visit with a gentleman. I was going to show him some of my chronology research. And a lady, I'd gone online and I was doing some studying through a Hebrew class that was out of Bethel, Israel. And this Jewish lady was running the program. I went through Israel National Radio and I go in there and I log in, had my name on there. It said Jim Apache OK. The lady looked at my name, and you got to understand, this is through Israel. She looked at my name. She said, Jim, where do you live at? And I said, I live in Elgin, Oklahoma, or Apache, Oklahoma. And she said, oh my gosh. She said, I live in Elgin, Oklahoma. And which is about, 15 miles from here. I was lying. She was lying. We weren't lying. We just weren't being accurate. She lived about 8 miles to the west of Elgin, and I lived about 6 miles south of Apache, which put us 2 miles apart. Actually a little bit less than 2 miles. She lived about a block from my son and about a block from my son-in-law and my daughter. And she heard my son and them would blow the shofar a lot. You know what a shofar is, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, I got one right over here.
Yeah, they would blow the shofar every Friday evening, and when they did, she wondered who in the world is blowing a shofar, because she was Jewish. She didn't understand what was going on. Anyway, that's how we met. She introduced me to Vendel Jones. Vendel Jones was the Copper Scroll guy at the time. He died a few years ago. Then he introduced me to the Copper Scroll, and we were looking at it. He was telling me, Jim, he said, why are you not interested in it? I said, it's just gold. It's silver and gold. And I said, there's no real spiritual value to it. And he said, oh my gosh. He said, read it again, but this time look at it from the perspective of Jeremiah. And I did. And I'm a big Dead Sea Scroll guy anyway. I love that stuff. And I'm telling you, Yeshua, Jesus, and John the Baptist were affiliated with, I promise you, with the guys at Qumran. Now, let me give you an example. You ever heard of the Sons of Light?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what they called themselves, the Sons of Light. They called themselves the Way, which is what Paul said that he was affiliated with. He was with the group called the Way. And I could just go on. And the poor, James, the brother of Jesus, was the leader of the poor. I'm telling you guys, these guys were affiliated with those people, and there is an amazing amount of information in there that is just like for the guys at Qumran, they had to give everything they owned, and they had it all in common, and they were all living out of one, just like what was described in scriptures by Jesus whenever he was here. So there is a big story behind that, and I want people to understand that if they're going to Israel, they got to go to Qumran, because if I'm right and things continue to advance the way they are, whether you hate Trump or love him, he's doing some amazing things for Israel. And he's opening up the door for us to do an excavation again there at Qumran.
Well, we're going to get there. We'll get there. So you're looking at this and you're reading the clues. It's so exactly describe to us when you're looking at the Copper Scroll, is it divided into sections, authors, or is it one author, or describe it?
The Copper Scroll, again, is 12 columns long, and there were 5 men that wrote the Copper Scroll.
Okay.
Those 5 men, the 2 of them, your audience will know. If they study the Bible at all and know the prophets, they'll know. It was Haggai and Zechariah, the son of Edu, the prophet. So there were 2 prophets, and I'm telling you, those boys were boys. They weren't men. They were 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds at best. Why would they let 2 little boys, just before the Babylonian exile, why would they let 2 little boys document and record all the locations of some massive amounts of treasure? You can actually see 5 handwritings on that copper scroll. You can tell the difference. And these 2 boys recorded 2 sections, let's say 20% of the gold and silver. Why would they do that, though? It's because Jeremiah said that whenever they go into exile, they're going to be in exile for 70 years. So if they were 12 years old, 13 years old when they wrote their portion of the scroll, how old would they have been when they came back out of Babylon?
82 years old.
There you go. So that's why they did it that way. And there's a possibility that one of the main people on the scroll was, they called him Shemur Halevi. He was the leader of this group. Shemur Halevi was possibly, and I'm not sure of this at all, possibly Baruch, the scribe for Jeremiah. So that's how I got into it. That's how I got started, and that's where we're heading with this, because that document is going to lead us to some amazing, not just gold and silver. That's great, but it's not important. The stuff, they were famous. That location was famous for doing what? That's where they found all the Dead Sea Scrolls. The biggest biblical find in history were the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, absolutely. 1947. Yep.
What if there's more scrolls? There is a specific location number 3 on the Copper Scroll, points directly to a cave right in the vicinity of Qumran, within 400 yards. points right at it. And what if inside of that sealed cave, and that's what they call it, a sealed cave, what if inside that cave there is just an entire library of biblical writings? What in the world would that do to the knowledge and understanding of the Messiah and my Jewish brothers?
Yeah, I'm going to back you up a little bit, and I'm going to ask you this. So, right before I went out, you got introduced to this lady. You were telling me about a gal that taught your kids in school that suddenly knows the Jewish Antiquities Authority. And what happens from there? You're interested in the Copper Scroll projects. You had just got through telling you about it. What? Walk us through what happened. How did you get in contact with this guy? What was that conversation like? Did you have a phone call? Was it by mail? I mean, and
you're talking about
how did you end up getting over there to talk to this guy and all that? I mean, this stuff is fascinating to me.
Whenever I got to Israel, she set it up. She set up a meeting with me, the head of the Antiquities Authority, of all people. She knew that his wife's name was Talma. They picked me up at a little sleazy little hotel that we were staying in because we were living on a shoestring budget, me and my buddy Chris Knight. He picked us up at our little hotel, the Jerusalem Inn, right there at the Zion Square, and he takes us to the Citadel Hotel. His son was a manager there. They set us up in this really nice suite overlooking the old city. And we're sitting there. I'm looking at my research. He's talking to me, and he asked me, "Well, Mr. Barfield, what can I do for you?" I said, "Well, it's not what you can do for me. It's what I'm going to do for you." I said, "You ever heard of the Copper Scroll?" He said, "Well, of course I have." I said, "Well, I think I know how to understand it." That's when he was, we had a great talk because he was a pilot too. We had a lot of things to talk about. He was artillery, I was artillery. Well, when I told him that, he just went, one of those body language of, oh my gosh, it's almost Shabbat, and here I am talking to this crazy guy from Oklahoma. Well, I looked at him, he looks at me, he said, "Mr. Barfield," he said, "we're here." He said, "Let me see what you've got." So I get up and I slide my research in front of him. I open it up to the research portion of it where it actually shows locations. And I start showing it to him. I showed him location number 1. Now picture this. He's sitting there relaxing. He's looking at my research, and I show him location number 1, and he goes, "Location number 2. He goes, sits up. Location number 3, he leans forward. Location number 4, he stops me. He completely stops me, and he says, "Mr. Barfield, just a second." He reaches into his leather bag. He pulls out his cell phone, and he calls the office. He's speaking in Hebrew to a little lady, and he looks at me, and he said, "Can you be here on Tuesday?" Now, for this Friday afternoon. I said, "Yeah, for what?" He said, "I want you to talk to the lead archaeologist and the head man of the entire West Bank and Gaza about what you found here." And I said, "Yeah, I'll be here." So he sets it up.
Yeah, you don't turn that invitation down, do you?
No. That I couldn't believe it. And it was so amazing because I'd already shown my research to a rabbi, a really high rabbi, and one of them kissed around on me. Yeah, that's a guy. Showing it to him. He was waiting for this interview to be over with between me and these archaeologists. And he told me, he said, "Jim, don't trust them." He said, I don't trust the Israeli Antiquities Authority. Well, I ain't got any choice. I'm not going to go over there and dig. They were not going to let me go dig it. So I record the conversation between these two archaeologists, the archaeologist and the head of the Antiquities Authority. I record it, and I take it back to him. He's listening to it. And I got a digital recorder. He's listening to it. And all of a sudden, he just takes some microphones off and lays them on the table. He said, "You're not going to believe what they said." And I said, "They think I'm a nut." He said, "Oh, no." He said, "They think you figured out this Copper Scroll." And I said, "Wow, really?" And he said, "Yeah." And anyway, they said it 2 or 3 times. The guy that was sitting there, his name was Yuval Pelek. He was an archaeologist, young guy. He was very interested. And matter of fact, I called him. That was in December. I called him again in April. of that year, and he wanted to talk to me. He wanted to set up, and he wanted to do an excavation at Qumran based on my research. That's how that went, and that's how I got to get to know these guys.
So you mentioned you're gonna get to do another one, but when was the first one? What year is this? And take us from there. So they're saying they want to do the excavation, and you went from a guy sitting in his man cave, looking through photocopies of what were the copper scroll, reading out the clues. You put this together. You share it at a local thing. This gal, is 2 miles from you. She knows there. I mean, this is like a whirlwind trip. I mean, you could. It's like waking up, finding yourself in the middle of a lake, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was the morning that I made the discovery. It was in the middle of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the time of celebration of restoring of the temple. Mm-hmm. Hanukkah is whenever they all the kids have got loads of chocolate wrapped in silver and gold and made into coins. So it's about the treasures of Israel as well. Well, right in the middle of it is when I made the discovery, and it was just unbelievable. I'm sitting at this very spot, and I put my head on my table, and I'm talking to myself. I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to get the people of Israel to listen to me? I'm a retired fire marshal, assistant fire marshal. I've got no credentials. Yeah. I'm thinking, how am I going to convince these? But they did. That little Comanche lady in Lawton, Oklahoma, she calls them and said, hey, you need to listen to this guy. And they did. They listened to me. And that's
Providence, brother. That's just pure Providence.
That's just the tip of it. I could go on all night. But
we got a little bit of time. We got 30 minutes. I mean, the whole point of this interview is to introduce you to my audience. And by the way, Jim, this is not only going to air on our channel, and I'll give you a link to it here when it's getting ready to air, but all these marathon interviews are going to be put together on the dailyrenegade.com. He's going to have them all there again to go. But that meant just reminding people, go to dailyrenegade.com, donate. So anyway, now I made myself lose my train of thought. So you're looking at this information. You see these descriptions of explaining exactly what's on the copper scroll. You have the different section, and what is written on there is descriptions of a location. How are those written as descriptions on this copper scroll of what to look for? Is it like you take 15 paces from the oak tree and X marks the spot kind of thing, or what does, if somebody looks at that, what would they expect to see?
Well, the very first one says this. The very first lines of it say this. It says, under the ruins in the valley of Achor. Well, the only set of ruins that I was familiar with in Israel at all was the ruins of Qumran. So I just happened to have laying right here on my desk was a map of Qumran, because I studied the Dead Sea Scrolls a lot. And it was laying there. So I picked it up, set it next to me, and I pulled up a translation by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Martinez. He had done a good translation, and it was well documented. And I like well documented research. And I started looking at it, and I'm reading it. And as I read it, it's under the ruins of Valley of Achor. So, well, this is in Achor, so I'm going to go with this one until it doesn't match, and then I'll find another set of ruins. The first set of ruins said, at the steps heading east 40 cubits, find 17 talents of silver service vessels. Those vessels were from the temple, either from the temple or the tabernacle, one of the two. And they were Solomon's temple, not Herod's temple. So I looked at the map, and and there was a set of steps, one set of steps. It was a mikvah, a very large mikvah or a utility pool. And it was exactly 40 cubits long. I thought, well, that's a coincidence. So I go to the next one. And the next one it pointed me to a spot right at the very northern end of the community. and it was a where all the water rushed in, and it described it in detail. And right there is where they buried that 900 talents I was telling you about. 900 talents. That is over $1 billion in gold in one spot. The next one was a description of a cave, and inside of that cave was the ephod. You know what the ephod is?
Yes. Yeah, it's the breastplate, right?
There you go. Most people haven't got a clue what that is. It's the breastplate of righteousness with the 12 stones on it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it says it's in a cave at a particular point. Well, as I was doing the research and I got near the end of the research, I noticed that the last 5, when all the descriptions are the same, it tells you where to look, what to look for, what the features are of the buildings around it. And then it says how deep to dig to find it. And all of the descriptions are the same. They're pretty much very consistent. Well, that third location and the 57th location were like this. Locations number 1, 2, and 3 were in a perfectly straight line, 3 being the cave. And then location number 53 through 57 were in a perfectly straight line, and they crossed.
It's 19
and they
hours.
matched right at the entrance of this cave. The cave is buried, so you can't see the entrance of it. However, how do I know that there's a cave there? How do I know that there's a possibility of a cave there? There's mortar smeared on the walls of that area, of that location. Mortar. And the archaeologist looked at it. He said, "No, that's a natural formation." I didn't think so. So I broke off a piece of that mortar and I sent it to a laboratory in Skokie, Illinois. The guys in Illinois sent me back a very official document. This is a laboratory that said that your findings at Qumran, this mortar that you've sent us, is more consistent with man-made material. And they gave this long explanation in scientific terms that it says this is more consistent with man-made material than any natural formation. In other words, in the book of 2nd Maccabees, it tells you the story that Jeremiah took all these items and he took them out to the area of Qumran and he buried them inside of a cave. And he sealed the entrance to this cave.
Right.
2nd Maccabees, 2nd chapter.
Sealed being the key word.
Yeah, sealed is the important word, because here's what he says is in there. He said, the tabernacle of Moses, the entire tent, all of the furnishings, all the ropes, all the implements, and meaning the furnishings, meaning the table of showbread, the altar of incense, the Ark of the Covenant, and whatever else was needed. And probably, the guys that know prophecy will know this. There's the ashes of the red heifer. I would bet $100 bill right now, if I were a betting guy, that the ashes of the red heifer are in that same cave that I'm telling you about right now. And why would there's 57 locations, why did they all cross? The first 3 and the last 5 cross right there at the point where we found this location. It's because, all the probabilities are there. This is way more than just kind of, sort of, maybe. That's all kinds of, and all but one location, I'm sure of. One location, I'm not so sure that I got the right spot, but out of 57, that's not too bad. And they were all right there at Qumran.
As you're describing this research to the Jewish fellows with the Jewish antiquities, and you're telling them that, they're excited enough to say, let's do an excavation. So you guys went and actually out there and did an excavation, right? When did that happen?
April of 2009.
April 2009.
We went out there.
Yeah, right around 11 years ago.
Yeah. The younger guy, Yuval Peleg,
almost to the month.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. He went with me. He set it all up. He was in charge. He was the man over archaeology at Qumran. And I was introduced to him by a Comanche lady here in Oklahoma. It's crazy. Well, she set it up where I got the introduced to her. He he was the one that leaned over to Schugendorf and said, I think this guy's done it. I think he figured out this copper scroll. So he was excited. But what happened was we started digging. We were digging at that cave, which was the biggie of the biggies. We were digging at that cave.
How shaky? How much were you shaking?
I was so what I wanted. I wasn't shaking so much as I wanted to go over there and get the doggone shovel away from these guys, and I wanted to dig because they were slow.
I bet you couldn't sit down more than a few seconds before you were standing back up again.
That's true.
I bet you were fit to be tied. That's how they would say it around here. Fit to be tied.
It was very difficult. But what happened, guys? There is a gentleman here in the United States that absolutely hates me. He is supposedly an archaeologist, and he's a well-known archaeologist here in the States. Well, he didn't like it that the Israelis were letting a retired fireman from Lawton, Oklahoma, dig at the most important archaeological site in the world. They were letting me.
You couldn't have you making that discovery.
Oh no! He didn't want that at all, and he was angry about it. But I wasn't really digging. I didn't have the permit. The permit wasn't in my name. This guy was. It was all in his authority. Yuval Pelech, under his authority, and it was done appropriately. But they didn't like it because normally there is a stack of paperwork to fill out, and I'm not exaggerating. I didn't have to do a thing. All I did was told them what I found, and they said, "Oh my gosh, let's go check." At the time we were digging, at the time we were doing the excavation, they were doing a big archaeological conference here in the United States. Well, guess who they were mad at and talking about during this conference? Me. Because and then they found out during their conference that I was over there digging. They made a phone call to Israel, and they threatened them to sue them if they didn't stop me from digging. Yeah, or stop me. Not whether they wanted to sue them or not, I don't know. But they didn't. They were mad. And guess what? The archaeologist came back the next day and he said, Jim, he said, have you got this on a blog that you've got? And I said, yeah, it's on my website. I said, I'm keeping the guys. He said, oh my gosh. He said, well, you need to stop. And I thought, why? Because all I was doing is reporting on what we were doing. Well, now I know why. That's because these guys were angry, and they didn't want some guy from Oklahoma being the one to discover the most important antiquities of all time. There's even guys in the Christian world that are going around telling people that I'm a treasure hunter, but I'm not a treasure hunter. I'm a grandpa that wants to come back home and be with my grandchildren, but I'm not going to stop. And you can tell those guys I'm not going to stop until they make me stop, because I believe that God put this in my hands. He allowed me to find these things because, I mean, I'm not a dumb guy, but I don't have the background and the training for this kind of stuff, except for my training as an investigator. And it wasn't my training as an investigator that made good at this. It was my Bible research. My Bible research made me a good investigator. I won Investigator of the Year for Oklahoma, and I won Investigator of the Year internationally. I beat even the Israelis, and that makes me very happy, very proud, because they're very intelligent people. So, do I have the background as an archaeologist? No. But you know what? It doesn't take an archaeologist to figure this out. Matter of fact, if I'd have used their techniques, I'd have never figured this darn thing out. And maybe that's why since 1952, they haven't figured out where this stuff is at. So the probability is incredibly high.
Well, you know, your story just kind of reminds me of how the Bible always says the Father does things anyway. It's not to the swift, it's not to the wise, right? You know, it's to the meek, to the lowly, to the humble. He reveals. He likes doing that. He likes to reveal his secrets and the things to the lowly, to the humble.
Yeah.
You know, he loves doing that kind of stuff to the nobodies. I'm not saying you're a nobody. I'm just saying by your words, you know, you're not a trained official, known archaeologist. You're just a firefighter from Oklahoma,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the father's lining all this stuff up in front of you.
Let me tell you something. If I'm right, and I do believe we are, I got to tell you that God laid this in my lap, and I am not kidding you, because there were times that I would know how I knew. I can't tell you, but I would know where the next location would be at, and it's like God downloaded all this information to me, and when the time came, and it had to be the exact right time, it all came flooding back, and it did, and it was a very strange experience. And I would make a discovery, and my grandkids, or two of my grandkids, were living with me at the time, and they would ask my wife. They'd say, "Man, how much coffee have you given Paul? He's in there yelling."
He's in there hooting and hollering.
That's a true story, and I'd get excited, and I'm not a real excitable guy except when it comes to biblical stuff. I love it.
Right. Oh no, I can sympathize and empathize with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a God. It belongs to God, and all the glory goes to God, not to me, because I'm telling you, when I'm done, and I want to be there when it comes out of the ground.
Right.
When I'm done, I want to come home. I want to come home and spend the rest of my life with my grandkids.
You kind of hinted that there might be another excavation, or there is another excavation upcoming, or can you say?
Well, no, I can't say everything, but I'll tell you this. Again, President Trump is a game changer. He's made it possible for us to once he annexed, or he proclaimed Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel, which it always has been and always will be. He gave them back the Golan Heights through his proclamations, and he also he gave them back the Jordan Valley. Now, it hadn't been officially annexed yet, but if he gives them the Jordan Valley, all these other this complications that there is for digging in the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, all the complications are lifted, and then it's all under the authority of Israel, not under the Oslo Accords anymore. No longer will the Palestinians have any access or say so in this matter. No longer will the Jordanians. And guess who's going to want it the most of all the people in the Middle East? Egypt. Egypt is going to want it the most, because where did all that gold and silver come from that they built all the tabernacle implements with? And if the tabernacle's in there, they don't want to say, "That's mine." No, guys, you gave it to them. You handed it to them. Let them go.
They would have given them the keys to the Mercedes if they had it to get out of Egypt, because of the plagues that were coming on them.
That's it.
They wanted them gone, and they didn't care what it took. Yeah, you take this with you as you go. Just go.
Well, and that's what I'm telling you. That's if that really comes through, and Trump has done an amazing thing, and people say, "Oh, his plan is giving away land in Israel." No, it's not, guys. They're acquiring more land. It's just officially going to be under the Israeli authority. With that other land that is allocated to the Palestinians, that's if they don't accept this deal, they're
so that was. So this is 11 years ago you've done this excavation. You probably, in a little bit of frustration, folded your clothes and put them back in your suitcase to come home. I imagine if it was me, I would have been throwing them in the suitcase to come back home. I would not have been. I would have been polite to the guys that took me. Thank you for your time, but I would have probably been spitting nails anytime I was out of eyesight of these guys, not getting to finish doing what you were doing. So this has been 11 years ago. Are you still in contact with these folks over there? Do you still talk to them? Or are you still in communication? They still care about a little old guy from Oklahoma?
You bet. And you know what? There is going to be a specific point in history, and probably on a biblical feast, a specific point in history where this is going to come out of the ground. With or without me, it's going to be done when God specifies. and everything will just unfold, and everything, the dirt will probably just crumble off of the walls and reveal, especially that cave. So it's going to happen. But when, I'm going to tell you that I believe it's probably going to be within the next few years.
I'm sure you've said that prayer too, Father. When this comes out of the ground, you've done already so much. Is it too much to ask that I can be present when it happens?
Oh,
I'm sure you've said that prayer.
I have. I mean, that's what all my guys want. That's all I want. There's about 4 of us on the Copper Scroll team that are, we've been consistent and stable.
I think I'm interviewing another gal about the on this marathon about the Copper Scroll as well. Somebody I'm sure.
Shelley Neese.
Yeah. So I'm interviewing her as well on this, and I get to hear her story of how she got involved on this. So don't give none of that away.
Okay. I won't say a thing. Yeah.
You'll take away from my other interview. But I say that I said what I said because I was talking to you about my book when I made that discovery, and I had a similar prayer when I, in my mind, see these images, these the arches that had been erected. I had a similar prayer, and then, Father, I want to be present to see those things crumble, be torn down, that image of bondage be taken away. I want to see that with my own eyes. Is it too much to ask for a little country boy from Indiana to be present when that thing, when by your might, gets torn down?
Wow. Yeah.
So I feel your heart in this, in seeing these things and wanting to see see those things, to confirm with your own eyes what you've seen with your heart and your mind, from 1,000 miles away, probably many times. I don't know that there's much else here to go over. I'm sure I'll want to talk to you again, just because. Well, you're an Oklahoma boy. I'm an Indiana boy, and I get along with Oklahoma boys pretty good from the country, and I could probably talk to you for hours about a lot of these things.
Oh, that'd be great.
So I'm going to look through here and make sure I didn't miss any of the questions here that I forgot to ask that I wanted to ask you. Oh, your research available. I've had it going across the screen here, but you've got several videos and pictures and everything else that it's on the bottom right below you right now. You got several pictures and images and small videos about this whole thing, documenting this and that. But you have a book as well, the Copper Scroll book. Yes,
Shelley Neese is the lady that wrote it, and
say that again.
Shelley Neese wrote the Copper Scroll. Matter of fact, it's over my shoulder right here. Shelley Neese wrote the book, and I was the guy that found all the research and did all of that sort of stuff. She did a wonderful job on the book, though, and I encourage people. She did a great job writing the book, and I encourage them to get it and pass it out to your friends, hand it to them. It's not about the money. We need people praying for us. That's the biggest thing that we need for this project. It all belongs to God, and we want to make Him very, very happy.
If somebody wanted to contribute money to you, I'm sure you accept it, right? For the next trip or for more information, or is there a need for that right now?
No, and I don't want people sending me money till we actually need it.
Okay.
And thank you, though. They're very, very kind of you, but because we're not big into the money thing. We need prayer, and that's what we want most of all. Is people, if they want to help, please pray that God's will is done, and that I stay within God's will as this time goes on. And there's going to be some difficult times ahead, I think, for all of us. And I just want to make sure God's will is fulfilled completely.
I agree. I agree with that completely. We are in some interesting times. We only got 1 year left in this particular president's term.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an exciting time. I'm pretty sure your eyes are going to be on what's taking place.
Oh, I watch it every day. And we have meetings every 2 weeks to discuss current events because of that reason.
Well, folks, I want to thank you guys again for joining us for this hour. As I said at the beginning, in the middle, and I'm going to do at the end, Jim is a friend to our friend, my friend, friends, Josh and Christina Peck. Their boy, Nathan, was diagnosed with leukemia just a little over about a year ago. And he's undergone many treatments. They've had to make many trips, many doctor visits, many traveling trips. And as someone who mixed chemo for 9 years in the hospital, I can tell you that's expensive. And I don't care if you have the best insurance. When you're getting those treatments, you tap that out really quick. And then you're responsible for the rest. And they don't care how long it takes you. If it takes you your whole life, they don't care. Yeah. They'll make sure you get paid. And if we can alleviate any stress at all from Josh and Christina so that they can do what they need to do, continue ministering to us, continue parenting their children with a little less worry. If we can help them eat for one more day, get gas one more day, make a payment on the house one more day, whatever it is, if we can do that and show the love of Christ to our brothers and sisters, we ought to do that if we are able. And that's what this is all about. Jim and I call Josh friends, and now Jim and I are friends. And so we want to do this together with you. So if you would, go to that link. Stay tuned. I can't tell you, this interview here is probably going to be third or fourth interview in, and there's going to be quite a few more interviews coming after. So if you're watching this as a marathon, don't go away here right at the next hour or 15 minutes after this one ends. You're going to be seeing another interview with another friend of Josh and Christina Peck. Jim, I sure do thank you for coming on the show with us tonight and sharing this with us. If I have my way, and since it is Disputed Lands with Chad Schaefer, I kind of get to choose. We'll have you on again to talk about this and maybe some other things. I'm sure the Copper Scroll is a lot of your interest, but I'm sure there's other things that you could talk about or stories that you could tell in that time. So
absolutely.
Yeah. If you're willing to chat, we'll have you on again. I appreciate you all coming out and hanging out with us tonight.
It was my pleasure. And I want to tell the young couple, Josh and Christina, guys, we love you. And we want you to be okay. Most of all, we want your child to be okay. We're grandparents. My wife and I are grandparents, so our hearts go out to you, and we wish you all the best, my friend.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been Disputed Lands Take on the World TV. I am Chad Schaefer. Until we see you the next time, take care.
Get right, get inside, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey. Get right, get inside, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey. Get right, get inside, get hungry, word of God appetite.